Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhute Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharne. Today we're going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, the summary of the Gita, and this is text number 66. Nashti buddhya yuktasya, nacha yuktasya bhavana, nacha bhavyantak shantir, ashantasya kutak sukham. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So let's read that together. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? Purport. Unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 5:29, that when one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer in all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only one can have real peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to the want of an ultimate goal. And when one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relation with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace, however much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested, peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. So the verse again, Nasti buddhya yuktasya, nacha yuktasya bhavanaha, nacha bhavyantak shantir, ashantasya kutak sukham. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So here it mentions two things. One of them is transcendental intelligence, and the other is a steady mind. The goal of human life, generally speaking, is to have a steady mind. Because if our mind is not steady, then we can't be peaceful. And if we're not peaceful, then we can't be happy. And the only way to actually achieve a steady or a peaceful mind is to have transcendental intelligence. So transcendental intelligence, as it's mentioned in this verse, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarvalokamahiswaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyattvamam Shantim Richati. The sages who know that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, and that he's the ultimate purpose of all sacrifice and austerities, and the ultimate well-wisher and benefactor of all living entities, so they can achieve peace from the pangs of material misery. So that's called transcendental intelligence. To understand and accept that everything in this universe and beyond our universe is only controlled by Krishna. As it says in the Ishupanishad, that everything in this material world is owned and controlled. Ishavasha idam sarvam yakinchan jam jagat tena tatena bunjitaha madgritaha kashasvidanam. And therefore we should understand what is ours and what's not ours. Actually, nothing is ours, but Krishna has given us things to utilize in his service. That there's things within our influence that we can utilize for Krishna, but we should at the same time recognize that these are actually Krishna's energies meant to be utilized in Krishna's service. That's called transcendental intelligence. And then in order to understand how to utilize whatever we have in Krishna's service, we need knowledge from Guru, from Sadhu, and from Shastra. And definitely both Sadhu and Guru, they work according to Shastra. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that we have a choice. Aida trividam narakasyedam, dwaram nashitam atmanaha, kama krodha tata lobhas, tasmat etam triyam chayat. There are three gates leading to hell, namely lust, anger, and greed. That every sane person should try to get free from these three gates because they lead to the degradation of the self. Degradation of the self means we forget who we are. And we act in such a way is that instead of coming to the blissful transcendental platform, then our mind is stuck on some material, temporary level where we suffer and so-called enjoy in material experience. But Krishna said, anyone who gets free from these three gates, perform acts which are conducive to self-realization, and thus he attains to the transcendental goal. In other words, the previous system that was applicable for self-realization, namely varnashram, was to regulate lust, anger, and greed, so that one can gradually make progress from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion to the mode of goodness. And in the mode of goodness, one could see things in the right.
Maharaj, I'm so sorry. You were fantastic. Everything is fantastic, but I'm trying to translate into Russian simultaneously. I beg you, please, a little bit slow down. I apologize, but I can't. I just, so sorry. So sorry.
Thank you for reminding me. In the mode of goodness, one can see things in the right perspective. One can taste things in the right perspective. One can ultimately understand things in the right perspective. That's called the mode of goodness. It's not that one sees things extraordinarily, that suddenly when we're in the mode of goodness, everyone looks like they have 4 arms or 2 heads. No, in the mode of goodness, we simply see, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Brahmani Gavi Hastani, Shuni Chaiva Swapakecha, Pandita Samadarshana. At least intellectually, we can understand that in the heart of all living entities, there is Krishna. And along with Krishna, there's the soul. Now, externally, everyone, whether it be a Brahmin, or a dog, or an elephant, or a dog eater, that their activities are different. But these are the manifestations of the particular body that they're in. But the soul is not their body. The soul is simply a passenger in the car of the material body. And the soul is suffering or enjoying according to the body it has, because it's put its consciousness into the material existence. And generally speaking, the soul, unfortunately, doesn't know that there's another possibility, there's another existence that it could put its consciousness into, and therefore experience a different level of awareness. So, therefore, transcendental knowledge is given so that we can transform or transfer our consciousness from the material consciousness, namely, as we can see, ordinarily our consciousness pervades the body. Prabhupada explains scientifically that our consciousness pervades the body through the blood. For instance, if you take a rope or even a rubber band and you tie it around your finger tight enough, then you don't feel your finger anymore. Don't try it for too long though, because you might not have a finger if you try it for too long. Therefore, we have practical experience that consciousness pervades the body through our bloodstream. But we also have experience. For instance, we may have a headache, or more likely a toothache, and we're suffering. And we cannot live without going to the dentist. Unfortunately, today's Sunday, and the dentist is not working. And we're suffering, we're calling up our friends, telling them how much we're suffering. And the more we talk about it, the more we glorify our suffering, the more we suffer. We're crying, our friends are crying. Even our pet cat is crying. Everyone is crying because I'm suffering. But then if we watch, we become distracted by watching, for instance, a play about Krishna, and if we really like it, then we forgot we had a toothache. And therefore we're not suffering. Until someone calls us up after the play and says, how's your tooth? Oh my God, am I suffering? I forgot all about it. Thank you for reminding me that I was suffering. So actually, the suffering is really a product of the mind. When we focus our attention and become concerned about our material body, then we start experiencing whatever state the body's in. And when we forget about it, we focus our attention and give our appreciation to something else, then our attention goes to that place. So that depends upon where we put our attention, and attention is really directed by our intelligence. And how we're perceiving things depends upon our intelligence. For instance, two people can perceive the same thing. One may perceive it as something positive, and something else as something negative. For instance, if a beautiful lady is walking down the street and a dog sees the beautiful lady, because of his level of consciousness, he'll think about a nice meal. Possibility of having a Sunday feast. If a lusty man sees a beautiful girl, he'll think of material enjoyment. On the other hand, if a brahmachari sees a beautiful girl, an actual brahmachari, he'll see it as a cause of problems. And if a transcendentalist sees a beautiful woman, then he'll think of how he should engage her in Krishna's service. That she's Krishna's, actually there's a soul inside the body that should be engaged in Krishna's service. And therefore, as a service to the beautiful woman, he tries to engage her in buying a Krishna book. Same woman, same objective experience, but seen completely differently by different living entities. So in the same way, every moment we're perceiving this material existence, or if we're seeing things in relation to Krishna, it becomes a spiritual existence in proportion to our absorption in Krishna. Just like if you're walking down the street and you see a pair of shoes, then if they're just old dirty shoes on the street, you don't pay attention to them very much. On the other hand, if they're the shoes of your beloved child, then you pick them up and put them to your heart with great appreciation and affection. It's the same shoes, but because they're seen in relationship to a beloved, therefore they become as beloved to you as the beloved. Similarly, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Bhutastam Atmanam, Sarva Bhutani Chatmani, Ikshite Yoga Yukta Atma, Sarvatra Samadarshanaha, that the true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized soul sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. And for one who sees me everywhere and can see everything in me, I am never lost to him, nor is he ever lost to me. In other words, if we just add Krishna to our experience, then ultimately, as we become more and more, as we fall in love with Krishna more and more, as we focus our attention and give our love to Krishna more and more, then the result is that everyone and everything we see reminds us of Krishna. And as Krishna is the big fire, when the big fire is there, then all the little sparks in the fire are also part of the fire. So when Krishna is there in our consciousness, then everyone and everything becomes spiritual by complete absorption in Krishna consciousness. So as Prabhupada writes in the Nectar of Devotion, there's one easy art of learning to love everyone. That is to become Krishna conscious. That's our basic philosophy. Ita Tura Mula Asheshanena Triptyandi Tatskanda Bujo Prashaka Pranaharachcha Yatendriyanam Yataiva Sarvahanam Atuteja. Just like if you water the root of the tree, then the water naturally goes to all the leaves and branches. Or supplying food to the stomach, naturally all the different parts of the body are served. Similarly, if one serves Krishna, then even the demigods are served or pleased. In other words, by the simple art of learning to love Krishna, then we can learn to love all living entities, everyone. Of course, that doesn't mean that we treat everyone exactly the same, although we try to serve everyone, help them become Krishna conscious, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has asked us to do that as service to Krishna. And love ultimately means service. We don't have to necessarily try to love Krishna. If we serve Krishna and try to do what's necessary to please him, when Krishna is pleased and he reveals himself to us, then naturally love will be there. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Tabu Kavanoi Shravanadi Shudachite Karya Udoy. We're all lovers of Krishna. That's our natural position, because Krishna is unlimitedly lovable, unlimitedly attractive. Just like iron naturally attracts metal, iron fillings. But if the iron fillings are rusty, then the iron will not attract them. It is not the problem with the iron, it's the problem with the iron fillings. Similarly, because we're a little rusty, being in the material world, therefore we're not attracted to Krishna. But as we become purified, as the oxidation is taken away, then the result is that we naturally become attracted to Krishna. That's why he's called Krishna. And the process of taking the oxidation away is called devotional service. That the more we focus our attention and try to give our service to Krishna, the more Krishna purifies us by revealing himself. In other words, when we're under the internal energy of Krishna, then the result is that ecstatic energy is also purifying, and therefore our natural consciousness is awakened again. And Krishna says it's not difficult. It doesn't require a PhD degree at a university. You can actually do it without touching your big toe to your nose or behind your neck. It's possible simply by satatam kirtiyanto mam, hitantas chadridavrataha, namasyantas samam bhakta, mityuta upasate. Just by chanting Krishna's glories. But of course, chanting Krishna's glories also means that we have to accept them, not just chant them. Not that Krishna is the owner of all material and spiritual worlds, but somehow or another, this part of my creation that is belonging to me, that I do with it as I like. And we leave the other part of the creation to Krishna. No, to a certain extent, we have to chant Krishna's glories, but also accept them and act according to them. Therefore, in the Nectar of Instruction, Sri Rupa Goswami gives us 6 activities which will help us accept the glories of Krishna, and 6 activities which will act as impediments for our actually appreciating Krishna. Now, Krishna is equal to everyone. He loves everyone unlimitedly. He's willing, when one becomes a devotee of Krishna, then Krishna becomes proportionally the devotee of the devotee. It is not that Krishna is the supreme, he's unlimited, and he thinks, oh, who cares about this little tiny spark? I got so many sparks. He doesn't love me, I don't love him. He rejects me, I reject him. Throw that little spark into the burning fire. Rascal. No, Krishna loves everyone, and he's waiting to reciprocate in a loving way with everyone. But Krishna cannot do that. He doesn't want to interfere with our independence by forcing us to love him. Because as soon as Krishna reveals himself to us, practically speaking, we experience how great Krishna is, how wonderful he is. And if we have a negative attitude towards Krishna, it wouldn't work out very well. For instance, when Krishna walked into the arena to fight against the wrestlers, there was Mustika, there's Chanura, there's Toshala and Shala, and they were strong as thunderbolts. Their bodies were built like mountains. And when Mustika and Chanura saw Krishna and Balaram, they made the remark. First, they asked Krishna and Balaram to fight against them. But Krishna and Balaram said, my dear Chanura and Mustika, here we have a crowd, an audience, and they want to see a wrestling match. Unfortunately, we're just cowherd boys. That we sometimes play with our friends in the forest and we wrestle, but that's just out of fun, out of sport. But you wrestlers, you're built like mountains. You're as strong as thunderbolts. The people here in the arena will be very disappointed to see such young boys like we fighting against big, strong wrestlers like you. That the audience would be very disappointed to see such an unfair match. Mustika Chanura said, well, actually, we're here to please the king, and that one who pleases the king, Kamsa, they'll be benefited. And one who doesn't please the king, they'll be chastised. But besides that, we know that you, Krishna and Balaram, are not just ordinary persons. You're the creators, you're the maintainers, and you're the annihilators of the entire cosmic manifestation. So it behooves you to fight with the king's strongest wrestlers. Now, this seems to be a common theme in Krishna's pastimes, that if one is a demon, an asura, like Putana, that Putana also recognized that this boy, although he's only some months old, is so powerful he could destroy the whole universe. Still, I'm going to kill him. So this is an overestimation of one's own power. If we meet someone who's able to annihilate the universe, we should probably be a little bit more cautious and not get into a fight with them. But as we know, if one is a demon, an asura, then one's intelligence is taken away. And Putana tried to kill Krishna unsuccessfully. And similarly, Mustika and Chanura and the other wrestlers, such as Toshala and Shala, they also fought with Krishna quite unsuccessfully. They had some knowledge, obviously. They were facing Krishna directly. They understood that he was God, all-powerful creator of the material universe that they were in, and yet they chose to fight against him. That's called poor judgment, because they had the wrong attitude. Or they were probably crazy also, anyone who's fights against Krishna, because Krishna is the world heavy boxing champion, and he's been undefeated since time immemorial. No one has ever been able to defeat him, and yet foolish demons, they sometimes try to do that. Similarly, it is not a question of just becoming aware of Krishna. It's also a question of developing a proper mood or attitude towards him. Therefore, when we're chanting Hare Krishna, transcendental intelligence is not just to understand how Krishna and his name are non-different, but also appreciate how sweet Krishna is, and therefore how sweet his name actually is. Madhuram, 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 Madhuram. As Sri Rupa Goswami says, the holy name is sweet. Or as he also says, that Krishna nama charitadi sutapta vidya, itopatapta rasanasana rochikanu, invadara anudinam sarvakala tushka, Bhavi Bhavati Tatkala Mulahandri. That the holy name of Krishna is transcendently sweet, just like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot relish anything sweet, it's wonderful how by simply chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within one's tongue, and its disease of avidya is gradually destroyed at its root. So when we're chanting japa, or any other time, then we should recognize if I'm not experiencing something sweet all the time, it's not the fault of the holy name. It's just like, as I've said before, if we go to a nice feast and we have prasadam, but we put a glove on our tongue, the prasadam may be very good, may be excellent, but the glove on our tongue makes it very difficult to taste the sweetness of the prasadam. Similarly, because we're covered, therefore, sometimes when we're performing devotional service or chanting Hare Krishna or doing other such activities, we don't experience a very sweet taste. Of course, naturally, we think there's something wrong with the process, because due to our false ego, we never think there's something wrong with me. Or on the other hand, the illusory energy will tell us that there are many good souls, but you're not a good soul. Therefore, Krishna doesn't love you. he doesn't love us. Therefore, that's why we're not happy in Krishna consciousness, because Krishna doesn't love us, because we're not a good soul. So Maya will try to dissuade us in so many different ways, convince us that actually I deserve to suffer in the material world because I'm just not a good soul. But that's just illusory. Krishna is sweet, and he wants to reveal his sweetness to everyone, including ourselves. Or as one devotee told Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I'm the most fallen. So Prabhupada said, you're not the most anything. And other devotees said, Prabhupada, I'm the most fallen. And Prabhupada's response was, if you're the most fallen, then why don't you do something about it? In other words, there is a science called Krishna consciousness, and if we follow the science, then we get the result. And the result is that the holy name will become sweet, just like sugar candy. But even if it's not sweet, but we should, with our intelligence, with our transcendental intelligence, we should understand that the holy name is acting like medicine. The example is given when one has jaundice. I don't know if anyone here has ever had jaundice. But supposedly when you have jaundice, then if you take sugar candy, it tastes very bitter. Does that mean that sugar candy is bitter? No, because we're covered by the disease called jaundice. It appears that the sugar candy is bitter. But the remedy to become cured from jaundice is to take sugar candy in a special preparation. When the devotees went to India, many of them got jaundice due to different factors. They didn't know what to eat. They didn't know what water to drink. Devotees used to go down to Loy Bazaar, which is a shopping place in Vrindavan. And there was some rumor that everything there is offered to Krishna in Loy Bazaar. So if everything's offered to Krishna in Loy Bazaar, it's all mercy. And they'd buy rasgullas, gulab jamins, pera, and eat to their full satisfaction. Unfortunately, the material nature, even in Vrindavan, is not so forgiving. And they come down with jaundice. Now, when the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, what should we do? They were quite surprised when Prabhupada would sometimes recommend that they take rasgullas, because not to their heart's content, but they take it in a certain way so that gradually the jaundice would become cured. Similarly, although we may not always have a taste of the holy name, still we should chant the holy name, understanding that if I make an effort to focus my mind on the holy name and give my love to it, chant as happily as possible. For us, sometimes it means without care, without material anxiety, to chant Hare Krishna. And without material anxiety means, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudram apa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti nakama kami. Person is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is always being filled and is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. In other words, we shouldn't spoil our chanting by becoming attached to some story. that's going through our mind. We may be happily chanting. Happily chanting means undisturbed by any stories that could go through my mind. But suddenly some story comes into my mind, whether it be some mistake I made on my spelling test or my test 25 years ago, and how if I could only go back in time, I could retake the test and get 100%. So we think, yeah, that sounds like a very good story. And with our imagination, we take our little time machine back to our class, and we take the test again, and we get 100%. And now our life has become a little bit more successful. In the meantime, 15 minutes has gone by, and we've finished 15 rounds because we didn't pay attention to any of the rounds. We wonder, how is it possible I could have chanted 15 rounds in 15 minutes? Because we didn't hear anything. We were in dreamland, taking our time machine back. So these stories that go through our head, they're natural. Anytime we see anything and taste anything or hear anything, naturally some story will come into our mind. Because that's the nature of existence. Material and spiritual existence are stories. They're experiences. And naturally, whatever we see will remind us of something. Either it'll remind us of something we've done in this lifetime, or something we've done in some previous lifetimes. And we have a whole lot of stories within our consciousness. Since time immemorial, we have accumulated many, many different experiences, and along with those experiences come many, many stories. So even when we hear the holy name, if we are listening, sometimes some story will enter into our mind. Generally speaking, we're chanting Hare Krishna, but we're not paying so much attention, or we're chanting Hare Krishna and we weren't exactly focused on Krishna throughout the day. And as soon as we chant Hare Krishna, then we become more alert, more conscious, and therefore we start remembering what we did yesterday or the day before, and some story comes to our mind, and we wind up listening to it. Sometimes the story is a romance, sometimes it's a horror movie coming through our mind, something that made an impression on us. But we have to become aloof from these things. Chanting japa is not the time to enter into storyland. Chanting japa is the time to enter into the storyland of Krishna, but not of some insignificant story going through our minds, which will never be resolved. After all, we've been here since time immemorial, and we still haven't found our soulmate yet. So that's a long time looking for a soulmate. And even if we found our soulmate, they've disappeared. And that's even more frustrating. If you found out someone you thought was your soulmate, and it only lasted for 100 years, then that's more disturbing, because you may not find your soulmate again in the time that would take time immemorial, in time immemorial time, in billions of lifetimes of Brahma. In any case, all these stories always wind up in frustration. Even you try to resolve some problem, as Prahlad Maharaj said, then there'll be 5 more problems that will manifest themselves as a result of your trying to solve the one problem. Therefore, rather than trying to do the impossible, to find a perfectly happy, secure place in this material world. One should try to find a happy, secure place in the spiritual consciousness. And that's why we chant Hare Krishna. But if we, during the day, as Guru Goswami said, if we try to develop our transcendental intelligence by engaging our senses in Krishna service, that will make our japa much nicer, much easier to focus our attention on our japa. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami has suggested, first of all, that Atyahara Priyasascha Prajalpo Niyamagraha Jana Sangastaloyam Cha Tadvir Bhakti Vinashiti. That during the day we should check ourselves because we're observant. We should observe what I'm doing. We should also observe where my consciousness is. And we have a choice. That's within our ability. If we don't like what we're doing, generally speaking, and we don't like where our consciousness is, we can change it to Krishna consciousness. That's the blessings of hearing about Krishna from the authorized sources. It gives us an opportunity to change from one state of consciousness, one activity to another activity, which would, from material activities and material consciousness to material activities, spiritual activities and spiritual consciousness. And we can understand what's the difference. So atyahara, collecting too much or eating too much. Then we should try to look around and see what we don't need, what we actually need, and not clutter our lives unnecessarily so that we're spending our lives trying to figure out what to do with things that we don't really need. And at the same time, we shouldn't eat too much. If we eat too much, then we'll have to sleep more. And if we sleep more, then we'll wind up dreaming. Our life will become a dream. And dreams are most of our dreams probably, unless we're engaged quite intensely in Krishna consciousness, most of our dreams will not be about Krishna. And besides that, if there's atyahara, if there's too much eating, then naturally there'll be prayasas, which means in order to get food, we have to cook more, we have to work more, we have to do so many things in order to provide the opportunity to get more food. Or at least we have to spend more time eating. So that's called prayasas, over-endeavoring. We should eat according to what's necessary. Prabhupada said if you're an ant, we should eat like an ant. And if we're an elephant, we should eat like an elephant. But if we're an ant and we try and eat like an elephant, then there'll be difficulty. And similarly, if we're an elephant and we try to eat like an ant, there'll also be some problem. And if we're engaged in prayasas, over-endeavoring, then the result will be prajalpa. We'll have to ask so many questions to so many people in order to get the means so that we can provide for our material desires. Even we want material benedictions, as we have one picture of the devotees holding up their arms, praying to the demigods, and the demigods showering their mercy in terms of material goods upon their devotees. Still, it requires endeavor. It requires studying how to get the mercy of the demigod, or how to get anyone's mercy, how to win friends and influence people. So this is all in the realm of prajalpa. And if we're engaged in prajalpa, naturally, we won't understand how to perform our devotional service effectively. or we won't have time to perform devotional service. That's niyamagraha. And then naturally, anyone who gets some happiness out of material existence, because we ourselves are souls, and our existence by nature is happiness, is pleasure and love. And if we get even a little drop of that, then we want more of that. That's called loyam. And the result is jnana sangha. We'll associate with worldly-minded persons who have similar interests that we do. They get similar drops of material happiness as we do. On the other hand, Srila Goswami has advised us, utsaha nischaya darya tat tat karma pravartanat sangas tyagat sato vrite tadvira bhakti pranashiti. We can develop devotional service by six ways. Utsaha, enthusiasm. Utsaha nischaya darya. So darya means patience. We're hearing this philosophy so we can become patient, tolerant. If we hear submissively, which means humbly, which means that a Brahma Jignasya, a Tarto Brahma Jignasya, basically speaking, if we think we're happy and enjoying in the material world, it's very difficult to be here submissively, because our philosophy is exactly the opposite of becoming optimistic about the material world. As Srila Prabhupada repeatedly said, because every time there was an election in America, for instance, or anywhere in the world, people have been conditioned into thinking that maybe with a new leader, things will get better. They're hopeful that there'll be a change, but there's never a change for the better, practically speaking. There's always a change for the worse. We can decide which leader we want to pick our pocket. One leader promises to pick our left pocket and take all our resources from our left pocket. And the other leader trying to become elected promises to take our money from our right pocket. But the result is that simply will be exploited. Therefore, one has to learn patience, and patience begins with understanding that there is no bright future to living in the material world. That even Brahma, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, who lives an extremely long period of time, he's worrying about dying himself. According to authorities such as Agasura, Putana, Trinivarta, when they were talking to Kamsa about what they should do about Krishna being born in Vrindavan, and that Krishna was going to try to kill Kamsa after hearing from Yogamaya, Durga Devi, when Kamsa tried to kill her in the prison where Devaki and Vasudeva were. Yogamaya told Kamsa that Krishna, who's been born elsewhere, is going to try and kill you, not me. So Kamsa at first became repentant, but then he inquired from his advisors, these various demons, what he should do. So the various demons said that, my dear Kamsa, really you have nothing to worry about from the demigods. Because, for instance, he said that Brahma is doing penance because he's afraid of dying. He's in the forest doing penance because he's afraid of death. Our Brahma is middle-aged now. He only has 150 trillion years left to live, approximately. So he's afraid. The first gray hair has appeared on Brahma's head. and he's afraid of dying. So one should be patient and not expect that in the material world, everything will go exactly as we expect it to, as we hope it to. We should understand that we're not the controllers in the material world, and therefore we should become a little bit humble, realizing that everything depends upon Krishna, everything depends upon our past activities. There are so many factors that go into our existence that we cannot control them. But we can control our attitude and understand that we're dependent upon Krishna, and dependent upon Krishna's representatives, such as Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and try and take shelter of them. Then one can learn tolerance, even in the midst of adversity. So if we're a little tolerant, and we're a little humble, a little tolerant, then we can actually focus our minds upon Krishna and not become disturbed by the temporary ups and downs in the material world. That's called patience. And if we're a little patient, then we can hear. And if we hear and we understand and accept what we're hearing, then we apply it within our lives, the instructions, and Krishna reciprocates and reveals this knowledge about himself to us. Then the result is we become confident that actually I'm on the right path, that I'm using my energies properly in this lifetime to get an highest goal of life, an eternal goal of life, the most important goal of life, that I'm doing the most important work, more important than any scientist or philosopher or educator could possibly do. If we're confident that we're doing the right thing, then the result is we can become enthusiastic in what we're doing, without doubt, as Krishna said. Asamshayam samagramam itagyasiti tachino. And when we have no doubt, then we can actually put aside whatever thoughts are going through our minds and become undisturbed by them, and go on, try to humbly, enthusiastically chant Hare Krishna and expect Krishna's mercy in the future. So that's called utsaha. Activities, endeavors executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called enthusiasm. So we have to work, but we should work with intelligence, understanding things properly in Krishna consciousness, doing things with care and attention to please Krishna, understanding things properly, and then we'll become enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness. And that's enthusiasm is the basis of our love for Krishna. Priti Purvakam. And Krishna reciprocates according to our enthusiasm, according to our priti, our devotion, according to our steady determination to serve him. And therefore, if we develop that burning desire to please Krishna and to serve him, then the result was we can become peaceful under any circumstance. Utsahanischayadarya tat tat karma pravartana. Then we can do our service to Krishna steadily, Sangha Tyaga Satovriday, and give up bad associations, Shadvira Bhakti Prasiditi. And our devotional service will steadily develop. We'll be happy, we'll know how to make others happy. And our transcendental intelligence will develop over the course of time. And our minds will become peaceful and steady and happy, and our lives will become successful in Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop here. Thank you. Any questions? So let's see who has Kapila Muni. What did you learn from the class?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna, dear devotee. I learned so many things, but in my bad English, I cannot repeat your words. I learned I need to be more humble and more peaceful in the mind, and also I try to make my job a real job, and not like I do for the moment, mental speculation, story.
Good, thank you. Trilokatma and Megha, what did you learn?
Hare Krishna, Gurudev, please accept our humble obeisances, Jai Shri Prabhupada. I learned that our perspective, developing vision is very important to keep everything in the right attitude and understanding of the situation. So to keep the everything in right perspective. And obviously, I mean, this part about the not listening to the stories of the mind was quite significant, because the stories are common all the time.
Good, thank you.
Thank
Anyone
you.
else like to say something? Anyone else learn anything? Lalita Sundari, did you learn anything?
Харе Кришна, Гуру Махарадж, мои поклоны. У меня очень беспокойный ум, и он все время рассказывает мне истории. И я научилась сегодня тому, что нужно меньше слушать эти истории и больше быть в сознании Кришны.
Yes, I'm here. So Maharaj, Lalita Sundari said that her mind loves to tell her so many stories, and today she has learned that she should listen less to the stories of the mind and more become Krishna conscious.
Good, Хорошо. Точно. See. Nandarani, Nandapriya Devidasi, Nandapriya Devidasi. Have you learned anything today?
Харе Кришна, Гуру Махарадж. Не слышно. Я сегодня научилась, что нужно продолжать все равно, продолжать повторять святое имя, несмотря на то, что иногда кажется, что это как бы нелегко, и с годами вкуса больше не становится. Вот. Но все равно, значит, моя болезнь еще есть, и нужно продолжать. Спасибо большое.
Nandapriya Mataji says that she learned that she has to continue to chant the holy name, despite the fact that so many years down the road, she still doesn't have that much taste. She said that she understood that she needs to chant more, and she understood her real position, that she is not free of the disease yet.
Хорошо. One more. Would anyone else like to say anything?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. I would just like to add one more point that I just learned from the class, that we need to be very enthusiastic in executing the services towards Krishna, like be it cooking, be it listening to class submissively, and this would increase our love towards Krishna.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Grandra Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. for permanent
Hare
Hare